Right now?
Well, they've got them in the back. They've got them, okay, wait. So, there's time, just check your time. If you've got like 40 minutes and you're on topic 3, you can do it. You know what I mean?
What's Left is a broadcast that's all about examining social and political movements and organizations on the political ideological left. So before we get started today with this incredible assortment of organizers and activists from an incredible array of groups, I want to start by helping you identify if you are possibly on the left. Now, I personally, Denavia Moget, a political commentator, analyst, and longtime media broadcaster here in Michigan, have come to know being on the left in a lot of different ways. I'd say you know you're on the left if you believe that men have no role in dictating what women do with their bodies. I'd say you know you're on the left if you believe in a government that provides the basic necessities to individuals regardless of their race, their gender, their religion, their class, or socioeconomic background. Earlier today on social media, I asked a couple of you to tell me what you thought was a core tenet of being on the left here in America. And here's what some of you had to say. For Lucio Bitoy, you know you're on the left if you don't believe, but you know that climate change is real. You know you're on the left if you always take an equity-based approach to public policy. These are good. I want to hear more of what you guys think is a core tenet of being on the left, and you can follow What's Left on Facebook and share exactly what you think that looks like. But today, I want to get to some of our panelists by inviting them to introduce themselves to you all before we talk a little bit more about current events and social and political movements that you'll find right here on the left. Up first, let's talk to you, Dan. Can you tell viewers a little bit about what brought you here today?
Yeah, my name is Dan Hesse. I'm Secretary of Grand Rapids Democratic Socialists of America.
Awesome. And then let's go all the way down the line and from right to left. We should start on the left, but I'm going to go ahead and start on the right for purposes today. Go ahead, Tommy.
Yes, my name is Tommy Watson. I'm a delegate, Democratic delegate in Ada, Michigan. And what brought me here today is I'm very concerned and motivated about the issues that we're facing in our country today.
My name is Ryan, and I'm from the Sunrise Movement Grand Rapids, and I'm here to talk about climate change.
Hi, good evening. My name is Wesley Watson. I'm with Next Gen Michigan. I'm the Regional Organized Director. What brought me here is that I'm fighting for issues for our youth here in West Michigan, what issues that matter to them, and then advocating that to our legislators and changing policies, focusing on our youth in our communities. Thank you.
I'm Sebastian Conley. I'm with the Industrial Workers Worldwide, and I'm just a simple laborer who can no longer sit by idly doing nothing, and that's what's brought me here today.
Hello, my name is Pablo Bello. I'm a host of Tiempo Latino show that is here in CTV, part of CTV. And I'm going to talk about immigration and some border issues. There is a jail in Baldwin. They're planning to open a jail for undocumented immigrants in Baldwin here in Michigan. Pretty far from here. So that's what I'm going to talk about.
Wow, well, I'm so excited to be able to have a conversation with all of you. So full disclosure for you guys and for the viewers out there today, I don't do starchy very well, okay? I don't do starchy and I don't do boring. I know this is TV, I know this is live broadcast, but today I want to be transparent, I want to have a real conversation, and I want to have a good time. So I really just want to kind of rip back the cloth, pull back the veil, and have a real honest conversation with you guys. I want to call out, I don't want to argue with you guys. I'm the only girl here on the panel. I don't know who did this backstage. I don't know why I'm the only girl here, but I'm going to hold my own today with all the fellas in having a real discourse around what is going on in the world, in America, and in our community. And I don't think you can talk about politics that are as volatile and as crazy as American politics without going a little bit into volatile and crazy yourself. So I want to give you all permission. Sometimes in certain spaces you have to announce it's a safe space to address the crazy. This is a safe space to address the crazy. I don't want the viewers to get bored with the starchiness because I want to have a real conversation. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Is everyone consenting to me going into the crazy today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to make sure because everybody got a little starchy from the beginning. So let's start with, we're going to dive right into the crazy. Our first topic today for the viewers who were kind of wondering what we were going to discuss today on What's Left, we're going to be talking current events all day. We're going to break format. We're not going to spend all day going over one organization or one group, but we're going to hit hard on so many different relevant things that you may have heard about. Hot button topics, trigger warning. We are going into real American politics today. And with no further ado, I want to start, if you guys don't mind, with the first topic being the Mueller report. Now, I believe as a millennial and as a serious, dorky, geeky politicos, that this is going to be one of the biggest investigations of our time. Knock on wood. Because what we've seen here, and for those of you who don't follow politics, and I'm a huge fan of the politically homeless, of people who do not feel like they have a home in any of the establishment, institutional kind of groups, who maybe don't subscribe to all of the news outlets. I want to talk to you guys today. The Mueller report is a report that came out from an investigation that was specifically into the president and his campaign, and kind of seeing if there was any correlation or corruption that could be perceived from the way that campaign, the way the president who won the election handled things during that time period. Now, this lengthy report said two things that I think are really, really interesting for people like me who are like waiting on it to come out. It basically said that our president, who was terrified by this report and did everything in his power to not cooperate with this report, and in several instances pretty much tried to obstruct justice in this report, cannot directly be tied to the work of being of a corrupt attempt to work with foreign governments over the course of the campaign. Which is interesting, right? I want to know how you guys felt about the Mueller report.
But the point is that it was obstruction of justice.
Absolutely. How do you feel about that? I mean, like having a president that is supposed to be the chief commander who doesn't himself hold himself accountable for supporting justice.
When he asked to his lawyer,
Michael Cohen.
McGann,
McGann or Cohen, yeah.
That was one of his lawyers, he tell you need to fire Mueller. That's obstruction of justice.
Absolutely.
And,
trying to get rid of people and stop them from investigating you.
That's one of the, that's a crime, obstruction of justice, when you impede the investigation in this way. And there are many other similar crimes he committed. He told to his lawyer, He fired the other, the FBI director.
James Comey.
That's obstruction of justice, and many others. Many other crimes, similar crimes that like. So you can impeach him just for those two. Like he said, you had to fire Mueller. That's obstruction of justice. That's a crime. You can be impeached.
Absolutely.
The other one fired what is the FBI agent?
James Comey.
James Comey. That's obstruction of justice. And so it doesn't matter if he commits a crime with the Russians or not. He's just several cases, several crimes of obstruction of justice. So he should be impeached.
So tell me this. What does it mean, though, if your president is a potential felon, right? If your president himself has decided that he wants to be above the law, he shouldn't be held accountable for his actions, even if he finds out he's being investigated. Someone who's not guilty, who's being investigated, generally will say, I didn't do anything wrong, have at it. Like, if your paperwork is in order, you just give them the paperwork. We have this president who is generally pushed back against any cry for transparency, accountability. I mean, everything from his taxes to the Mueller report. What do you do in America? What are the American people supposed to expect to happen at this point?
Well, I'm gonna give it another twist, which I didn't say in the promo, excuse me, but I've worked in the police department before. And what's really, really, really happening, I'm a little older than a lot of people on this panel, and President Trump sued Forbes magazine about 25, 30 years ago because it didn't have him in the top 500 of some of the most wealthiest people in the world. So what he's doing a lot of times is he's trying to, it's just like they say, when you tell a lie, you gotta tell another lie. So the stories that he's been telling the American people, it's coming to the table and it's actually revealing that the fact is that he's not who he says he is. And when you start talking about breaking the law, actually, I wish we could pull it up and actually pull up what presidential duties are and what you have in law and what you don't have in law. And we would be very shocked because if we wasn't, slavery would have never happened. Because the president could have actually just said, nope. And then that's why we have articles in our Constitution, because they knew it was going to be overthrown, so they put those in there, articles of this, articles of that. And I just look at it different. I'm not a Trump lover, but I also know that he uses the law and the Constitution to his benefit.
I don't know that that's necessarily a Trumpist thing. What I've seen is that people with privilege, and because laws are subject to interpretation, anybody with privilege can expect those laws to be interpreted in ways that benefit them. I don't think that that's necessarily a Trump strategic, brilliant game to finagle the world. I think that's just a thing people do with money and power, and I think it is indiscriminately a byproduct of having power to decide that laws aren't going to apply to you in the way that they were written and intended. I think that is both the blessing and the curse in our justice system, which is that where discretion is allowed, you can expect at times grace, but then you can push back and call that the curse because we all have implicit bias, which allows us to grant grace only to those who we like or those that we agree with or those that look like us oftentimes. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I think with the Mueller report, all of what our current president is doing, we have to start at who let him to do this. I think a lot of responsibility
Republicans
rely on Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham. That's where the responsibility lies. They let this happen. The Republican Party let this happen. They got bullied by a bully, and it's unfortunate because our country is suffering from that. The world is suffering from that. Our economics is suffering from that. Our environmental issues is suffering because the Republicans let this happen. Once he went down that escalator and called Mexicans rapists and things like that, that's when the door opened to a lot of the stuff that we're experiencing currently. And nobody didn't call him out. I don't know. I wonder would they call President Obama out if he would have said some of those things.
Oh, I certainly believe so. I definitely believe so.
I know they called out Reverend Jeremiah Wright for a lot of the things he said.
So who's the responsibility on, because I think this is an interesting question, right? Of course, the Republican Party should hold some responsibility, and a candidate that they endorsed, that they supported, that they empowered to lead this great nation, to then undermine the very things that made us believe this nation was great in the first place. I think the Republican Party has some responsibility in that. But in today's government, right, where we see the Democratic Party is maybe taking over the House, and then you could say, well, then the onus is on the Democratic Party to impeach and to begin that process. If this is the Nixon, if this is the president whose behavior is unbefitting of the office, then is there any pushback, especially on this panel? Do you guys feel that the Democratic Party as well needs to mobilize and do its due diligence to get him out of office beyond getting a Democrat elected?
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
But I want to hear from some folks who haven't spoken as well. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
because I dominate. Yes, I think we need to use the due process system of getting him out, because I've lived through an impeachment. And our country was divided. We had several things going on. You had the Vietnam War, you had Nixon, you had Watergate, and when you tear a piece of cloth, you know, a book I like to read, it says, do not put a new piece on an old garment. When you put a piece of something new on something old, the old is going to tear the new. So
You mean don't impeach Trump?
well, what I'm saying is that we need to.
He has to be impeached.
Well, what we need to do.
I mean,
okay,
like,
who would you
you know,
put there?
like,
Who would you put there?
Who?
Yeah, who would you put there?
Well, you impeach Trump, you impeach, what is the vice president?
Mike
Mike
Pence.
Pence?
Mike Pence.
Would you prefer Mike Pence in office?
No, you
to Trump?
impeach them.
And
you,
then
you
what?
impeach both.
And then what?
You
and
impeach
then-
them both?
And then what?
And then
Impeach everybody.
probably you have a Nancy Pelosi as a president. You can have-
I think we don't have time for that.
But the
I
thing
think
is
we're
like
in the process.
if you impeach Trump, he won't be in office. He won't be able to.
You know how long that would take?
And do
He
you
won't-
think, and I'm going to ask this as a
He
political
won't be able to
strategist.
win the election.
I'm going to ask this as a political strategist, right? Is the pushback that people feel about impeachment, about it being divisive, and about it inciting a group more on the right,
It's
right?
not divisive. It's justice. You know, you're not taking revenge. You are making the laws, applying the laws.
But I also believe
The
that
president
it's
is violating the laws, so he has to be impeached.
But
It's
wouldn't you
not
agree-
revenge. It's not division. It's not attacking. It's the law. You apply the laws when the laws are violated.
What is the law?
The law is that he violated the laws when he's telling his lawyer to fire Mueller. That's obstruction of justice.
Says
That's
who?
a crime.
Says who?
Who says?
Yeah.
The law.
I mean, it is obstruction.
The law.
Yeah, it's a strike. But
But I want
says
to hear
who?
from, one second, I want to hear
What do
from
you mean
Dan
he
too.
says who? The laws. We have laws in this country, right?
So if we can take a moment, I want to hear from Dan too, because I want to hear the perspective of the Democratic Socialists of America as well, because this Mueller report has put a lot of people in ideological space, even amongst the panel of people who agree. There is dissension to be in contention to be felt amongst what should happen next. I think that's sometimes the most incendiary question is what's next? What do we do?
Well, the thing is that
so I want to hear from Dan now, if you don't mind. because he was waiting
there
to
is
speak.
no debate. He's violating the law. He has to be impeached.
So if Dan could speak for just a
No,
moment, I want to hear from Dan as well.
Well, I would say, there's this fine balance that's hard between, like I felt for a long time there was so much focus on the Mueller report and, the Russian hacking, and, the Democrats wouldn't focus on the issues. And I mean, I totally think he's complicit and should be impeached, but
Yeah.
if they're not able to do it, on the other hand, I think a lot of people look at that poorly, that he was able to win, in my mind, unfairly, of course.
Of course, because of the electoral code.
Yeah,
Not
and
because
so,
of popular vote.
right, and so, I mean, our organization has, focused on a lot of what we can do locally. There's little we can do nationally, I mean, other than just talk to people, but
What are some of
if
the
we
things that
focus
you
on
guys are doing
issues,
locally?
We do mutual aid. We have a political action working group. We have an outreach working group to grow our cause. Sorry, and we also have been focusing on eco-socialism recently.
What does that mean to viewers who may not be familiar with that rhetoric?
Focusing on climate change. And just seeing that, with all this discussion going on, if we don't have a planet, in several years, then it may all be out the window.
Fair enough.
I would like to agree with Dan. I think that we need to look at this pragmatically, and trying to say that laws were broken and laws need to be followed is really quite naive, because this is the American political system, and we know for years that these people in power don't get punished for laws that they break.
Nixon was
we know
impeached.
This.
He violated the law and he was impeached.
And as political pragmatists, we must look at the fact that Trump is at his strongest point of his presidency right now.
Sure
the
is.
Democrats have put all of their eggs in one basket with the Mueller investigation,
One
and it was a flop.
It's the highest
Yes, there are
approval rating
things.
it's ever been right now. Like, this is the
One
highest.
basket.
I mean,
He is so successful.
And
To
it's-
attack him now with impeachment would be the most foolish move for Democrats.
Yes. Yeah,
Democrats
politically
need to
it's
be scrambling to find a new platform. They need to drop this issue of Trump's legitimacy or collusion with the Russians or anything like that
It's not
immediately
collusion,
and
it's
get on the
obstruction
real
of justice.
issues. We need to talk
The
about
problem
climate
is that people
change. We
don't
need to
even
talk
know.
about
I mean, you
healthcare.
talk
We need to talk
about
about
you are
good
talking
jobs.
about
guys, let's make sure we're being
other,
respectful. The viewers can't understand us if we're
collusion.
talking on top of each other. So let's be respectful.
that's not the issue. The issue is that he violated the law while he wasn't being investigated. It's not if it was conspiracy. What is the fact that he was being investigated? Collusion is not even a legal term. It's
Right.
conspiracy.
Right.
So he was being investigated by conspiracy, and while he was being investigated, he violated the law by obstruction to justice. If the police investigating me and I say, oh, you know what, you had to fire this guy, that's obstruction of justice.
Does
But-
it,
So this is the confusion among the people. Like, it's not that he violated the law because he was investigated by conspiracy. It's because he violated the law by obstructing justice.
And that's not a very strong political stance to
It
take.
doesn't
is
matter how
he wasn't
strong
guilty
it
of
is.
what
When
we
you
said, but
violate
he's
the
guilty
law,
of this
you
other
have to
thing.
you have to be impeached.
so what if we all agree with you, right? What if we ideologically agree that he should be...
It's not
Let me finish my question. I just wanna ask you a
ideology.
question.
It's law.
Let me just
It's
ask
the
you
law.
a question. May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. What if we agree with you, in principle, that because he broke the law, he should be punished? But we also understand that if we decide to carry out this act of punishing the president, that will then empower his entire party, we'll lose the next election, and then we'll deal with another 8 years of a Republican presidency, all because we weren't being strategic politically. Now, or we can let him finish this term and never get elected again. We can focus on a blue wave that would then empower a completely different party that could lead to policy that would actually change the country instead
Well,
of focusing on one man's
Amen
Like-
to that.
what would you, on principle, let me finish my
like-
question. On principle, what would you say was the better outcome for the people you care about in this country? 8 years of Democratic leadership.
No,
or a
but you have to take
president in
you have to
jail?
take in consideration, like when Nixon was impeached, it wasn't
talking
like
about right now.
this. No. This is history. This is.
But who did he
But
pick?
the
It's a
political
different
climate
times.
is different than it was with Nixon. This is not the same
It
political climate.
wasn't different.
Yes, it was
It's
very
very
different.
different.
Nixon didn't have Twitter. Nixon was not calling out the fake news. Nixon lied to his base, but was not as powerful.
Nixon
in
fired the
editing.
Attorney General.
I understand, but this is a different political climate.
He was firing the Attorney
I'm telling you,
General.
as a 25-year-old millennial, America today is not the America that Nixon was president over. This is a completely different base. Trump's supporters aren't getting their news from the same place that Nixon was. Trump's supporters are not Nixon supporters. There are similarities in their ideals, but the way and the channels that which Trump uses to flex his muscle didn't even exist when Nixon was president. And so today we have to acknowledge that
I
the
mean,
game has changed.
Nixon was impeached
If you want to
because.
pretend we're still in the 70s,
Let me
fine,
tell
but
you
we're not.
let me tell you history because obviously you don't know.
I believe in
It's-
history.
The
It's not
history
about
was that
history.
he
I studied it.
he was getting away, and then they found this recording.
I remember.
He was recording every conversation,
I remember.
and this
I
is
listened to it.
this is how he was impeached.
I think
I
that this
remember.
is
He wasn't impeached because Watergate or
I
all
know.
the other
I
crimes.
have actually watched the
But it
entire
was
documentary on
because
the case.
the investigation finally found out that he was recording everyone.
And even if that's valid, you didn't answer my question about which.
What
which-
was the question?
Which outcome was the one that you would wish on the people of America? the outcome where you get 8 years of Democratic leadership from being politically strategic and smart and winning elections, or losing elections and getting a president in jail? Which outcome do you think is going to really advance the needs of people in America over the next 10 years? Trump sitting in a jail and Republicans still winning, or Democrats leading and
If
Trump doing
you
whatever
if
he
you
does?
pitch Trump, he's not going to win because he has to resign, right?
But another Republican
Another
could win.
Republican.
Another
Yeah.
Republican will leave.
Yeah,
That's
and
how
Mike
I
Pence, who
think
may
so.
actually
I-
get
You still haven't answered the question. So
may
that
actually-
means we're going to wrap up this topic and we're going to move to the
when,
next one. Because you haven't picked
let
an
me tell
outcome.
you let me
You
tell you
haven't
the
picked one.
history.
We gotta move on.
When Nixon was impeached,
very hot topic.
It is a very hot topic, and he will not choose an outcome. He will not say.
He's passive.
I choose impeachment.
You
I
choose
choose
Trump.
impeachment. I choose the apply the law. It's
For
not
the
funny.
record-
It's law. You
No,
know?
it's the law isn't funny.
Yeah, we
The
gotta-
conversation is funny.
It's like you talk about collusion and all this stuff, but the law is that he broke the law. It's obstruction of justice, and you can be impeached for that. And
I
it
think we
can
have
be proved.
Sebastian who wants to.
I just wanted to
And-
jump in and say, as a millennial, I agree that impeachment is probably the right course to take, if only because it's upholding the precedents of our government. I mean, if the president commits a crime, it's on Congress to start the impeachment proceedings. Even if Pence becomes president, even if the impeachment fails, it's still about upholding the precedents of
The
the
law.
government. When we just start disregarding parts we don't like because we think it's politically untenable, it results in our current situation with people,
I'm always
disregarding
intrigued
the
by people
law.
on the left that voice this constitutional commitment, and dedication to laws, right? Because we're the very same people who believe that just because someone is undocumented doesn't mean that they should be deported. While we have people on the right that say, "But it's the law. They're illegal. They're breaking the law.
Exactly.
They walked across this line.
Exactly.
That's imaginary, and it's a law. And they broke this law." But we also consider being on the left a core tenet of understanding that laws are not always right. I believe that if you sit at a counter that tells you can't sit there because you're black and you're breaking the law, you're still doing the right thing, because it's not just, laws aren't black and white in America. Laws are
Well,
the product
slavery
of,
was
let me
a law.
finish. Laws are the product of people in power, and people in power aren't always right. And doing what's right is about being strategic and thinking about what's best for the people who need the best outcome. I don't think that laws are the end all be all, because laws change. And if Trump decides today that impeach me, fine, I'll help you guys do it, and then my party will win for the next 10 years, then I would not agree that impeachment was the best thing. I've seen people use this system and win elections, although they didn't have the popular vote, and they say, but that's the rules, I won the game. My statement has always been, we need to change the game, and we need to not focus on the way the laws are now, but getting the laws to where they need to be so that we can honor them and so that they work. If the impeachment process is a law but it doesn't work, then it's moot. You know what I mean? And so that's always been my take on things. But I feel like here on the left, there's shades of gray. And I like that we're having this conversation, and I want to keep it moving along to our next topic, because while we're evaluating this presidency, I think it's a really important topic to think about, which is the kind of administration that we're faced with now. I touched on this a minute ago about how the presidency of today is not the presidency of then, but there are a lot of similarities, right? We do have a lot in common. Every American president, for example, has pretty much been an imperialist. We have never not been an imperialist government, and we see that even today. I think the game has changed in that in the media and in the narrative, we try to promote that the American government is always doing what's best for the people who need it. But, information is more readily available than it ever was before. And so specifically when we think about the presidency now, and in our next topic, where we're talking about keeping democracy kind of going, and the current situation that we see our government in, kind of straddling the fence in terms of the next civil war over an imperial presidency, or at best a failing democracy for a lot of people around the world. What are some of your viewpoints here on the panel? I know some of you are from organizations that, and some of you are from backgrounds that branch into international politics. Tell me what your thoughts are right now on the way the sitting president, potential felon or not, is governing this country regarding how we treat other countries in this American historical stance.
Well, historically, when the different branches of any government start to crumble and become less effective, power is consolidated into the executive branch of that government, and the figurehead becomes more and more powerful. And we're seeing that in American history right now. domestically. It's pervasive with the federal government having more and more control over the states, and internationally, country to country, we can see the dynamic that was built up over the Cold War era, post-World War II, with the United States at the top handling all the affairs of every country in the world starting to crumble. China is starting to move up into the political sphere and gain dominance into their own Asian political sphere, and they are investing in South America, they're investing in Africa, they're investing all over in areas that we previously have colonized and then under the guise of free trade colonized again. They don't like us, they like the Chinese. So as the world order starts to disintegrate, the United States, just as it does domestically with consolidated power in the executive being more forceful to get what it wants, it will do so internationally. The United States will become more belligerent in order to keep its place in the world as it slowly slips down from it.
Yes, that's why we have to be so strategic, because it was just a report last night with the farmers. I grew up understanding about farm subsidies. And my wife, her relatives, they were large farmers in Arkansas. Matter of fact, her grandfather wasn't a sharecropper. He owned the farm that the sharecroppers worked on. My uncle, my uncle's wife, their family has the largest black farm in Arkansas. So, but then during the yield program, just like it was just on the TV last night about the hog farmers here and everything like that. See, that's why you can do sweeping legislation, but then there's also a backlash. And seeing like how China has gotten a large portion of this, they have a trade agreement. So if this is an Apple computer and you take it to China, China wants to know how you built it. So then they'll come back and build it and then sell it back to us. So, you know, it's all kind of policies that are ingrained in our government that tilts the scale, because we look at it, okay, world dominance. So, okay, this is how we get world dominance, but they actually has a plan. Okay, you want world dominance, but I want a piece of the economic pie that you all have. So I'm gonna sell this back to you at a cheap price. Same.
I agree that, there's a lot of backlash with these sweeping policies. I forgot what I was going to say.
No, it's fine.
Well, I would like to say the way somehow to tell you like how the U.S. policy impacts the world and how it impacts the United States at the same. Like in the 80s, right? In the 80s, the United States started sending money to fund death squads in Central America. In Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador,
Haiti, yeah.
Yeah, the Reagan started sending money, and then they saw this money. They even sent like Green Berets to train these murderers in Central America, to torture people and to kill them. So they kill students, they kill doctors, they kill nurses, they kill teachers. So now what we have in Central America is just a lot of criminals. The result of this policy in the 80s, like how many, 30, 40 years ago?
From Reaganomics, yeah.
So now we have all this economic crisis in Central America. Guatemalans, they exterminate like dozens of villages. They put the people in stables and burn them alive to get like the Nazis do, right? So now we have this immigration from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. Here, they're coming here because their country is a living hell. They kill you in the street. There are guns. If you have your little tacos in the corner, like right here, or your store, these thugs come to your store and say, give me $100 a week or a month, otherwise I kill you.
Yeah.
Or I kill your family. So this is how the U.S. policy impacts the world. Now we have this incredible crisis of people like coming here, and people doesn't even know why they are coming here. You know, I mean, they say, "Oh, these illegals breaking the law," but if this is the result of your own government, like sending money, millions of dollars, to buy weapons for these armies and these governments, the dictatorships, and kill a lot of people. They torture a lot of people. They destroy the social fabric of these countries. You're talking about like millions of people like affected by these policies.
Sound like Africa to me.
So but you can just walk for 5 months and you get to the United States. You don't walk from Africa to the United States.
Dan, you
No.
were talking
yeah,
about
no.
this too,
So
right?
this is
Well, yeah.
this is the result, you know, like this is why we have so many people coming here from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. That's why, and Trump doesn't tell you anything about this. They don't tell you, look, we have this crisis. Oh, the illegals, let's put them in jail, let's put them in cages. But nobody tells you, well, this is what we did in these countries, and now what we have here. Thousands and thousands of immigrants coming here looking for asylum, political asylum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, you know, an example, of that imperialism, you know, that has gone on ever since I can remember. I don't know when there was a last president who wasn't for regime change wars. You know,
I would argue
and,
that we've never had a president who didn't lead by way of enabling American imperialism. I just haven't seen that in American history. I do believe that we have presidents that after leaving the office,
like Eisenhower.
have then turned around like Jimmy Carter, right? Who turns around and then says, you know, this is the way we should lead. This is the way humanitarian. But when they are in office as president, I would argue that we have never in American history had a president who refused to enable this particular doctrine.
Yeah.
The
But-
fact is that stuff goes on behind their back, whether they like it or not. And like,
Yeah, and
this is-
but the president's been, you know, in charge of this, and it's supposed to be Congress making the decisions. And instead, you know, the president's
Need to know.
been,
Need to
you
know
know, like
basis.
under the Bush administration, just basically deciding to go to war, and that's continued, you know, with you know, Trump tweeting about Iran and Venezuela and those sort of things, and just, you know, implying, in my opinion, that, you know, we could just do that anytime.
Absolutely. You know,
Now they want to overthrow the government of Venezuela. Maduro was elected democratically, you know.
And we're going to get there in just a minute. Now, I would argue, because I appreciate having a robust conversation on this, and I think any one of these topics, if I'm being honest, could be a full-hour segment. I'm just going to be honest, because I've been broadcasting in politics for a long time. One of these topics is so heavy, it could fill up an entire show on its own. And with a panel of this side, I want to make sure we get to hear from everyone. And I think our next topic is so important. I don't want to deprive viewers of getting to hear us kind of unpack it a little bit. This third topic that we were going to talk about today, I don't know if we shared this with you all, was really regarding a current event that I don't know how many viewers were aware of, but you know you're on the left if you believe that no children should be dying in American custody because of their status, their citizen status. And most recently here in America, we have seen that happen yet again. The count is now a third child that has died in American government custody as a result of this current hot button immigration reform topic. And this president with this zero tolerance for illegal immigration, supposed illegal immigration. But I do believe that you know you're on the left if you know that no human is illegal. And so today I want to kind of talk to you guys, because I know some of your different organizations. I know you touched on this, Pablo, about kind of why we see the migration and how America kind of created this, and how today we do have to kind of address that it's unacceptable for our government to be responsible for the deaths of children. I don't think it's a political issue to determine whether or not children should die because of citizenship status, because there is no child that determines or chooses their own citizenship status, right? And so when we see children that are dying in American custody, in our government's custody, because of this political climate around immigration, what is it that we want to see happen here in America, and what is it that we should be doing? And for the viewers that are watching who may may empathize with this and also say, hey, I didn't know that another child had died recently. What is being done about this, and what should we expect to happen here in America to change this?
These are the three children that died under custody of the federal government. Jacqueline Caal, Jakelin I think she was like 9. Felipe Gomez Alonso, I think this is the teenager, he's from Guatemala too, I think. And Marie Juarez, another little girl that died.
Pablo?
I think she was on the border, and she was arrested by the immigration officers, and she died because she was exhausted, and she died of thirst, I think.
Yeah, dehydration.
Dehydration.
Yeah.
Felipe Gomez Alonso, this is the last one who died. This is a teenager. He had the flu, and then they took him to the hospital. He came back to the shelter where he was living, and I think he died in the shelter. I don't know why.
So let's talk about that a little bit. What are your thoughts on where we are right now as a result of these harsh policies, and what is it that should be happening so that we can prevent this?
I think we have to look back at history. During the time of World War II, we had a high migration of German citizens coming to our country and Jewish citizens coming to our country. At that time, we had Ellis Island at that time. Also on the West Coast, we had Angel Island over on the West Coast. So with those times, we have to look back and see what policies and procedures worked within that. Now, how we got to this point was we had a president and attorney general implemented a zero tolerance policy on immigration. So with that, and the separation of families within that. It's really devastating when a child, especially a young child, is separated from their family. They're coming over here, like what Pablo said, they're coming over here for opportunity at a better world. They're coming over here for opportunity sometimes for better health care, better medical assistance. And when you're coming over and when a child is separated from their mother or their father, it's very, very devastating. I wonder, will the effect still be the same if it was a child from Denmark, or if a child from Switzerland, or a child from Russia? I wonder will it be the same? I wonder, even with our First Lady, would it been the same if she had to go through the same struggles that our children is facing on the border? The simple answer is the institutional racism within our country have created policies where it's always a ceiling put on people of color that's trying to make a better opportunity. We have to tackle the racism within our country and tackle the system that basically birthed this racism. This quite frankly, over 500 years of racism we have to tackle in order to really solve the issue of immigration.
Well, I would argue it goes back a lot further than 500 years even, right? I mean, if we think about it, this is a country of immigrants. It was racist to come here and tell the brown people, the indigenous people who are on this land, we're gonna take it from you and we'll kill you if you don't let us. By the way, teach us how to cook, teach us how to plant, and then take our religion, send your kids to our school. There was a cultural genocide that was all built on this premise of we're superior, right? Which we see today manifest itself in the form of white supremacy, which is this notion that we are entitled to reign supreme in numbers and power because of the color of our skin. And historically, that was all a construct just to protect land and money, which of course, again, equates to power. So we see that again because and we also understand that this issue isn't just about someone's preference. I think sometimes in America, people forget when we talk about immigration, they're like, oh, they want to move from like a not as good neighborhood to a better neighborhood, right? When really, migration is about the ability to survive, right? Deciding whether or not your child is going to die of starvation or be killed because of climate change, and then deciding whether you're just going to cross over here where they are insulated from these issues for another couple years, right? And I think we don't discuss that enough. Really, like some of the how dire it is that people migrate. And I recently had a conversation with someone that let me know just how important it is that we're talking about how life or death it is sometimes to move to a country where you can have an opportunity to support your family and see your children survive, right? And when we were talking about asylum, they didn't understand the difference between seeking asylum. To them, it was just about like illegal immigration. And I said, no, our country has a responsibility to honor this designation, right? When someone is fleeing something for valid reason, it's our responsibility as a country that's open to immigrants and open to migration to find a home for them, right? To keep them safe. And we've neglected that humanitarian responsibility. We've decided to innately not be humanitarian anymore, although that was a core tenet of being American. That's not even a core tenet of just being on the left, but it's truly being American, right?
Yeah, so I would say, stuff that we can do, I think it's pretty universal in DSA that people are for the abolishment of ICE, an organization that's been around only since 2003 and is really not doing what, it was supposed to do. Last year here in Grand Rapids, the Kent County Jail had a contract with ICE to house people who were detained, and there's a lot of work done, and it's not completely, the contract's not over, but now they need to get warrants in order to hold people, and which...
A warrant signed by a judge.
Yes,
not a warrant from
right.
ICE, but a warrant signed by a judge.
Right, and which effectively makes it so they're not doing it anymore. And those are just places to start, and I think that, every local community could stop collaborating with ICE, and that would be the first big thing I think to do there.
I think that. Thank you. I think that we need to look at the bigger picture in this issue. All three of those children who died, they died of diseases that they contracted before they were in custody of border security. The fact is, they didn't die of being like necessarily mistreated or beaten in these camps. They did not have sufficient medical care.
The little girl who died, she was in custody of the Border Patrol, and she was exhausted because, working on the...
Heat exhaustion, dehydration.
But exhaustion is not a part of a sickness.
Instead of giving medical attention right away, they just leave it there. Like an animal,
No, these...
Well, the bigger picture of this is that we aren't able to handle this many people. We have tens of thousands of people. How many is that?
5,000 a day.
5,000 a day coming over the border. We can't handle this influx
It's
of
a
migrants.
crisis the U.S. government created.
Yeah,
I'm just
it's a
explaining
crisis.
you what happened. And
Sure.
You just don't care.
No,
that's
we
not my
care.
problem.
But what I would like
I
to draw
sent
attention
billions of dollars to kill all these people and destroy the social fabric, and
it's only going
and now,
to get worse.
That's
I'm
not
not
my
sure.
problem.
It's going to get worse because of climate change, because of
It's not
dwindling
climate
resources.
change. They destroy the social fabric of
Yes,
these countries.
I understand why this is happening right now, but what I'm saying is we need to look at the bigger picture, which is the future, which is the fact
the bigger
that
picture
water
is the
resources
US is
and
responsible
agriculture
for
is
these
already
policies,
suffering. It's not who's responsible, it's who's going to fix it. We know who's responsible. We want to know what we're moving forward to do.
But once you acknowledge who's
say, like,
responsible, you also
5,000
acknowledge some
people
type of
coming over the
accountability,
border?
right? When you create a
Certainly.
problem
Who's
and then say you
responsible
shouldn't
for
address
it?
it.
Yeah, because I read a book. It says that there's no condemnation. What do that mean? See, condemnation is you bringing awareness to what you did. And then that condemnation is shame. So it says no condemnation. So that means that the what you did You acknowledge it.
Doesn't matter.
What you did is acknowledge. I'm account. How
I
I got
mean,
it.
to me,
Can I finish?
that's.
I
don't understand. Like,
I
you
wanna
say
make sure
5,000 people
I
coming
want to
over
make
the
sure
border,
the viewers can hear everybody,
and
so I
it's
want to let
not
us
my
finish.
responsibility. You know, I mean.
Yeah.
And I think we want to hear your
That's the problem,
perspective,
right?
but we want to make sure we can hear everyone on the panel. And so we want to let everyone finish their thoughts so we can at least, the viewers can get an idea of all the different ideologies that we have here represented on the panel today. So I want to make sure I'm honest and as a moderator, and I want to make sure, because these are
I'll be
hot
quiet
button
after
topics for us, they're hot button topics for the viewers. I'm sure there are listeners that agree and disagree with every single one of you. But I want to make sure, in order for us to facilitate a robust conversation, that we're doing our due diligence to let everyone speak. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Thank you so much, guys. So, like we were saying, I want you to go ahead and finish your thought.
Okay, and we do need to fix it. Like I said, being on the police, up until recently, juveniles was hands off. When I worked at the police department, you had to call everybody. But then crime changed, and like especially in drugs, the criminals actually started seeing that you can use juveniles, and you can get away with it. And so it's just like in the civil rights movement. When they went and crossed over the bridge, they told them that we're going to put the juveniles up first because they had television coverage. So you're looking at a dog and a water hose, not just a water hose, but a fire hose, shooting 500 pounds worth of pressure per second. And you're knocking over a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. And that radiated all over the world. And that's one of the ways how we got our civil rights, by being strategic. And I constantly keep pushing that word, strategic, because just like I mentioned condemnation, that condemnation is a strategic word, because it said we're going to fix it, but then don't wallow in your mess. After you figure out that this is happening, don't wallow in it. Let's go to the next step, which fixing it. And see, and that's what I think why we're here, trying to come up with solutions on how to fix it.
And I think we can't talk about fixing it, like the true onus for migration, without really addressing climate change, right?
Well,
I mean, of course, there's a responsibility in dealing with the current situation, right? Which is people that are looking for a safe place to live their lives with their families. That is obviously a human responsibility, right? To make sure that everyone has access to just a standard quality of life that involves shelter and food and drinking water and opportunity to support themselves. But we also have to address climate change, and that's not just. I want to finish. That's not just an American responsibility, right? That's a global responsibility. But America is a huge part of that, right? And it's very hard to address that under an administration that is always pushing back on the veracity of the existence of climate change and what should be done about it, right? So where are we with climate change here on the left in terms of what are we?
So I agree with him. Like climate change is one of the reasons why people is coming. Like they are in Guatemala and there is no water. Right? There is no rain. It hasn't rained for months. You were growing corn or tomatoes
in farmland villages, nonetheless.
And
too.
then nothing grows. So what do? You can go to the city because it's a bunch of gangs living there. They're gonna kill your family. So why do you do? Let's go to the U.S.
I think when it comes to like climate change, everything works hand in hand. It's like a puzzle. One puzzle piece is missing, then the puzzle is not complete. So when you look at the social determinants of health, climate change plays a big role, but also having access to affordable health care plays a big role. Having access to a good education plays a big role into that. Having access to food plays a big part into that. When people don't have access to food, how can a person think throughout the day? It is children going to school, and their only meal for the day is when they go to school. So when people don't have access to food, don't have access to water, even in Flint, most people don't know in Flint, in order to get some of the water that was provided through the state and some of the churches, you needed a state ID or a driver's license. A lot of immigration or immigrant families didn't have driver's license or state IDs, so they couldn't get water. So cutting off access to water, cutting off access to food. Also, when you look at this whole thing, when you look at our criminal justice system and the war on drugs, how it played within cutting the environment. So in order to really heal the environment hill, the climate, all these things play in motion. People need access to health care. People need access to food and water.
Now,
and that's
now
my
we have
point.
how many children affected by lead.
How
You
many
know,
children?
I mean, that's
Right.
gonna be like
Yeah.
a
Well-
huge
But
problem.
when we talk
you know?
about climate change and the reason for the migration that we see, right? I know some of you on the panel are from environmental justice backgrounds, right? A part of organizations that are proactively right now making climate change an important part of this next election, and an important part of making climate change a hot button topic in the houses and homes of Americans all over.
But you see,
What do you want to see happen?
Republicans don't care about climate change.
Well, I'm not talking about Republicans.
That shouldn't be an issue because
I'm talking about people on this
you
panel.
know what is the key?
Look, so you were talking
healthcare.
about climate change as if it was a
Healthcare.
puzzle piece as a part of a greater puzzle, right?
Republicans
I think
don't
climate
care.
change is the box holding all of the puzzle pieces in. If we don't deal with climate change, everything falls apart. There is no standard of living when we have crop failures across entire countries that force mass migrations to areas that are not as much affected by it. And we have no ground to stand on if we do not stand on climate change as the primary issue.
Because
But-
that's why the
yeah.
Depression happened. We had the Dust Bowls in Oklahoma. And see, and then when you start, if you go down south and you start seeing the trees lined up like that, that's strategic. They planted them like that so the wind would not blow the crops away. They did that, and then even to bring up slavery, how slavery took off was they invented the cotton gin. And the cotton gin allowed them to do more yield, which it then turned the soil, because you're supposed to turn the soil every 7 years. But they didn't do it. And then so what happened is 30, 40 years in the future, we had the Dust Bowls. And the Dust Bowl is actually a precursor of total climate change. And I mean, it ran families from Oklahoma, Mississippi, all the way to California.
And I think we'll continue to see that until climate change is addressed. And I feel like this is like another one of those topics where like you could spend an entire segment on it because there's just so much to it when it comes to migration and climate change. And I resent trying to put those two together because that is really complicated to dissect and be addressed wholly. But what I want to talk about before we close today, and this is going to be our final topic, okay? For all my heavy hitters, power packers here, the last thing I want to lay on the table in front of you is something that we actually touched on earlier, which is the activities of the American government as it pertains to Venezuela. Now, I know many of you are aware, some of our viewers probably have been watching this, how Venezuela, this critical component globally, right, just because of the sheer amount of oil that exists, the natural resource that this government has access to. And recently what we've seen here in American politics, under the Trump administration, that has in some ways, like we've always seen, kind of propped up a coup, try to overthrow the government, try to empower a new government, and then all the pushback that comes from the people in that country and in those communities who say this is our leader versus who the United States says is now your leader, and then the pushback that happens, which we now are seeing play out even with the embassies, right? So this embassy here in America and the embassy in Venezuela, and the groups and the coalitions and people who are trying to get the world to watch to protect the laws and rules around how we engage foreign governments. For those of you on the panel who've been watching this unfold, and when we touched on imperialist presidency, right, we agreed that this is how America operates, like it or not. Here on the left, not so much, but like it or not, that this is how the American government operates, and who have kind of thought on so many levels that this is something that we have to address. What do you guys want to see done, and what is it that you guys feel like needs to be advocated for at a federal, at a national level to see this issue resolved peacefully, civilly, and justly?
It's a strange issue. It's actually quite surreal. I remember Marco Rubio shared a picture of Gaddafi alive at a podium, and then Gaddafi being torn apart by a mob. And then he posted the picture of Maduro, and then Maduro again, as if like he was drawing the comparison, a direct threat from a congressman to the leader of a foreign nation. They're not even trying to hide it. John Bolton said straight up, this is to protect U.S. economic interests in South America. That's why we're doing it.
1 minute.
Yeah, wow. You know, this has been a lot to cover in 1 hour, and boy, does the time fly. This was a very large panel. So I want to go ahead and thank you all for watching What's Left right here on GRTV. Encourage you to stay connected with the content. You can go to info@whatsleft.tv and send us your thoughts on today's broadcast. You can subscribe to the Facebook page. You can share this video and add comments, and I'll be sure to engage you all. Thank you all to all our panelists for being here today. This has been a ride. And to our viewers, keep tuning in to GRTV. You're watching What's Left, and I'm Navia Mojay. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been
Yeah,
a
thank
lot,
you.
right?
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, that was so much content. Time flew.
Twice as much time.
That's what politicians do. They don't talk.